Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Newmeyer, film critic for WOR Radio. Let's have one more round of applause for the terrific and amazing one of the special things I have seen this year. It is absolutely incredible. And please welcome Tom Hiddleston and Ren Schmidt. Congratulations to both of you on this amazing film. Tom, there are so many levels to Hank Williams, and I feel as if you get sort of so deep into it, into the solemnity, into the seriousness, the soulfulness. What was the key to Hank Williams for you?
I think the key for me was I wanted to explore the tension between his what I saw as his external charisma and his internal vulnerability. I was fascinated by the fact that he was clearly an electrifying performer on stage. Someone who really who set the world alight at a particular time. And there's a reason we're making a film about Hank Williams. We're not making a film about Roy Acuff or Ernest Tubb, who were big stars at the time, hit records on on the Billboard chart. But Hank obviously had this extra special thing. But as a songwriter, the lyrics and the pure simplicity of the poetry came from a great reservoir of personal pain, and those two things seem to be in tension with each other, which I found really interesting.
Hank the person is amazing. Hank the iconic figure in American history is amazing, but there's also the level of the music. I would imagine that getting to know this music and performing it yourself is almost like learning another character, right?
Yeah, it was challenging.
That's you on all these songs.
That's me singing. Yeah. But there were two strands to it, to the singing really. One was relearning in instinct my rhythm and my pitch. I'm a natural baritone, and what's happening? I'm a natural baritone, and Hank is a natural tenor. And but actually, the great challenge was to transmit the power of his songs. I had to get inside those emotions for myself. So he's singing from some of those songs are very, very dark, and they communicate sadness and loneliness and the mournfulness. That really the only way I was going to communicate the power of the song was to interpret that sadness and loneliness myself, and try and get inside the songs in that way. And that was actually much more like acting than it was like anything else.
And you're not naturally a singer. That is the first time you sung on film. You're not
That's the first time I've ever sang, really.
That is a high bar, I would say.
Apart from missed sort of low moments in a karaoke bar. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever done that.
Absolutely astounding. Ren, let's talk about Bobby Jett, because I feel like she's a formidable force. That scene on the dock, I feel it's so adult, it's so mature, there's so much going on when Hank says, "You don't want to marry me," and she says, "I will." There's a strength to her. She's willing to do something in regards to their relationship, right?
Well, I think at that time women didn't have many choices, and she was a single mother already. I mean, that's kind of what the joke is at the beginning of the scene, is that Hank tends to fall into things with women that already have children. So I think she's really kind of putting herself out there and hoping, I think, for something that's maybe more than just marriage. But I think she also she really sees him, and I think she knows kind of who he is. She's not asking him to be something that he's not. So I think she kind of knows what she's getting into. But I think in that scene, what's so heartbreaking is that she needs the support and the structure in order to have this baby, and Hank doesn't. I don't think he doesn't want to be in a loveless marriage. He's already done that, and I don't think that means that Audrey and Hank weren't in love. I think that by the time they, things were ending, things were very hard. But yeah, I think she really is. She's a force to be reckoned with, and I think part of that is because she's willing to be honest. And I think oftentimes in those situations, most people aren't, you know, you hide. And I think the thing that's so beautiful about that scene is I think they're both being very honest.
Well, the scene with Ren on the dock is one of my favorite scenes in the film. Was one of my favorite scenes to shoot, and I love it because Mark Abraham, our director, he had such compassion for both characters in that moment, that there really is nowhere else to go but to tell the truth to each other. They're neither of them are in an easy place, and they're sat there at the end of that dock in a unforeseen situation, and so what I love about his writing in that moment is that they find humor in it, even in a sad place. They find a way to connect and tell the truth to each other, and I think it's a hugely generous thing he did to play it in one shot. It doesn't cut away to close-ups. It exists in a two-shot, and it was such a pleasure playing it with Ren. She's such an amazing scene partner, and we were right there together, and I watched that back, and it brings back a very happy memory for me.
Amazing scene. We're going to take a couple of questions in just one moment, but I just want to bring up and ask you this point about Hank. People forget that Hank Williams was sort of the first musical star to die of his own hand, essentially, die of his vices. Essentially, alcoholism killed him. Prior to that, you know, Benny Goodman had died and George Gershwin, but it wasn't essentially by their own vices, and that was part of his iconic status and part of his tragic story, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Hank Williams is now frozen in time in this moment, and we have no image of him as an older man, and we have no knowledge of what his music would have been like in his seniority. And it's so interesting how he casts such a long shadow, because there's something so honest about the moment that he caught, so youthful and so energetic, that never matured, and I find it very tragic, because there's a conversation to be had about, you know, is it necessary to create great art to live at a particular pitch of intensity which destroys you? And there are so many musicians who have burned twice as bright and not for long. It's a terrifying list, really. Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, and it extends into James Dean and Marilyn Monroe and Heath Ledger, people who left us too soon. And I just find it very sad. I wish we'd known the Hank Williams that wrote music to later in life. I wish we'd seen that person.
Amazing to think about what the changes of the 50s and 60s would have done for Hank Williams, who dies before that hits an American culture.
You know, you compare Hank to someone like Bob Dylan, and you know, Bob Dylan has gone on record time and time again, and said that he wouldn't have become a folk musician without Hank Williams. And Bob Dylan's, you know, still cutting tracks today, still writing new material, and it's such a shame that we never got to see that side of Hank.
I'll take some questions now. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Tom. This is an amazing movie, and I want to know, it's a very sad movie, so after this movie, how do you get yourself out of the emotion? And also, you have been giving so many positive influence, and I want to know where you got your positivity and how do you drain out of that?
What's that last bit?
Drain out the bad emotion.
Yeah, great question. Well, I finished this film just before Christmas in 2014. So the best thing to do was to go home and hang out with my sisters and have them take the piss out of me, basically. It's very refreshing. Go home, go back to your family, go back to your friends, make Christmas dinner, and play party games and essentially mess around. So it was very reassuring to be back back with my family. And thank you for what you've said. Hello. That was amazing. It was a very theatrical run. Would you like to to be an actress. Really. I'm sorry, I won't draw attention to you anymore. Sorry, just shooting a little movie back there. Yeah, in terms of positivity, thank you for that. I don't know. I enjoy things, and that's it really. I can't explain it. I just I think possibly there was a time, maybe about 10 years ago, where I just realized that this isn't a dress rehearsal, and you've got to enjoy things while they last. An old friend of mine says you have to smell the roses because they don't last. They wither on the vine, and you can't put that off. So I try to appreciate, you try to appreciate life as it comes to you, because God forbid it passes you by and you get to a time where you look back and say, I wish I'd done this, I wish I had tried this. You have to try and you have to indulge in what is in front of you and mine it for all it's worth, because we don't get another chance. We're not coming back.
It's a great question. You had a question right here?
Come back. Hi. So you obviously have like a really great range as an actor from theater, film, and television. So I was kind of wondering how you switch from playing, Shakespeare on stage to someone like Hank Williams.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and if my response is strange, it's because it doesn't feel that different. I can see that it looks very different, but every time there's something quite similar about the experience, which is that I feel my job is to step inside another human life, be it real or fictional, and represent their truth. And there will be aspects of their truth to which we can all relate. They are universal feelings. And my job is simply to get inside that and reflect it back. Whether the words are the rage-filled, destructive words of Coriolanus, or the lyrics of Hank Williams, it's still an investment of compassion and commitment. And if acting has any power at all in the world, it is the power to connect people by showing that we all experience the same feelings. Essentially, it's an act of imagination and commitment in that regard.
Ren, what are your thoughts on that in terms of bouncing between comedy and drama and different tones like that? How do you kind of keep a steady hand in that way?
I think I tend to rely on the writing. As an actor, that's kind of where I start, and oftentimes I think I try and wait as long as I can to lock myself into something until I feel like I really understand kind of inherently how a character moves through a story. So I feel like that's where I start, and actually I started out doing theater where you definitely have a beginning and an end, but then I started doing a lot of television. And the beauty of that is that you don't know where the character is going, just like none of us knows what will happen 5 minutes after we walk out of the theater. So it's kind of weirdly very freeing, because then you just get to focus on the scene and that moment and that time. And I feel like weirdly part of what lent itself, I think, to playing this part was the fact that there are only 5 scenes and 4 scenes in the movie where Bobby appears, and I just approached each one separately as like what's kind of like the kernel in this scene that's happening for her, and just and also what's the relationship, because I also think in all of those scenes the relationship between Hank and Bobby Jett is different. It's definitely progressing, even though it's in kind of like minute, very nuanced ways. But yeah, writing for me is always where I start. It's the thing that helps free me the most, because it gets me, if I can get it into my body, weirdly it gets me out of my head, which is a bad place to be when you're an actor.
Interestingly, I'm not sure if writer-director Mark Abraham probably planned it this way, but in a way that scene at the dock could almost be like a 5-minute short film or a one-act stage on play, right?
Over and over again. You're like, let us do it again. Can we just do it one more time? Come on. Mark, let us do it again. It was so fulfilling to do.
Yeah, like a short, it absolutely could have been like a short play, absolutely, yeah. Let's take another question in the back, on the left-hand side right here.
From me?
Right here in the green, that's right.
Oh, no, her.
Okay, right here.